Morning. In Matthew 23, Jesus is addressing this group of people who outwardly seem one way, but inwardly are a mess. There have been times that I've told my kids to clean their room, and by clean their room, they translate that as shut the door. Those are different things, right? Like shutting the door makes it look okay from the outside, but inside are dead men's bones. Like it's a very different thing on the inside. The catastrophe is still there. What we're talking about, what Jesus is addressing with the Pharisees, with the people of that day is, you need to take care of yourself. Jesus was talking about the idea of self-care well before it was popular today. Unfortunately, today, what we do is kind of the same thing they were doing, though. When we talk about self-care, about taking care of yourself, you got to take care of yourself. You got to make sure you're a priority. We use that language today, but we mean it in the same way the Pharisees meant it. We mean take care of the outer part of you. Make sure you got enough time for relaxation. Make sure you're eating healthy. Make sure you're getting enough exercise. There is nothing wrong with good diet and exercise and a little bit of relaxation, but that is not you. That is your tent. The real you is your soul, and that's who you've got to take care of. And so this morning, that's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about taking care of ourselves because we're called to do that. We're expected to do that. And one of the things that Jesus very clearly taught against was people who had not done that. They had not taken care of the inner man. They'd cleaned the outside of the cup, but inside the cup was still filthy. They shut the door and said the room is clean. The first thing I want you to do is I want you to understand that if you're going to take care of yourself, you have to decide which person you're going to take care of. You need to be one person. In Matthew 23, in the verses that we just read, they were two people. You two outwardly appear righteous to men, but inwardly you are full of hypocrisy and lawlessness. Two people. Right? There was a very clearly cultivated image of one person publicly, and then when they went into their inner room where only they and God were, there was an entirely different person. And those two people were expected to coexist within one body. The language of the Bible is double-minded. The idea of somehow attempting to be a split soul. I'll be a little bit of this and a little bit of that. Now here's the thing. No matter what you choose to be, no matter what kind of person you wish to be, you will still be a work in progress. Right? So if tomorrow you decide, I'm going to think of myself as an athlete, that doesn't mean that there isn't work left to be done. Or if tomorrow you said, I'm going to really cultivate being a more giving person. I identify myself as a giving human being. That's who I'm going to be. That doesn't mean you're done learning how to give. But until you pick one person to be, you will always have problems. Because what they had is an outer image and an inner image, and those two were different. The most exhausting thing in life is a lie. Because the moment you tell a lie, you're constantly having to protect that lie. Right? You got to make sure everybody else, the people who know the truth, don't come in contact with the people who have heard the lie. You got to keep them separate. You've got to keep the lie distinct and clear in your mind, right? You know this is the way things are, but you need to give everybody else another image, and so you've got to keep that lie up. It's the most exhausting thing in the world. David saw that with the sin with Bathsheba. One lie never really stays as one lie, does it? It always cultivates more lies, more problems, more conspiracy, more interconnected webs of problems. The most exhausting thing in life is to live a lie. So don't do it. We're not saying that you have to live perfectly. But you do need to live in a way that is I have a friend who is a psychiatrist, and he calls it congruent. You have to live in a way that is congruent. That who you are trying to be is congruent all along the way. That I'm not one guy at work and another guy at home and another guy Sunday morning. That who I am attempting to be should be the same no matter what point in my day you find me. I may not be doing that perfectly, but that you would at any moment in time be able to, somebody could look and open a window into your day, into the timeline of your afternoon, and they could say, oh yeah, they're the same person attempting to live the same way. You're going to have to become one person. And that's a decision only you can make. In 1 Corinthians chapter 5, we're told that it is when we become that, the psychiatrist term is congruent, the biblical term is sincere. I know many people who are very sincere are not perfect. But in 1 Corinthians chapter 5, let us therefore celebrate the festival not with the old leaven, the leaven of malice and evil, but with unleavened bread of sincerity and truth. See, if I make a decision that I am going to be a follower of Jesus, I'm going to be a disciple. It's interesting, we call ourselves Christians, and rightfully so. That's a biblical terminology found in the book of Acts. But the most common term to refer to followers of Jesus is a disciple. And sometimes I wonder if we only refer to ourselves as Christians and never talk about being a disciple, we might be losing something. It's not that one's right and the other's wrong. It's that they're meant to coexist together. To be a Christian is to be a disciple. And it is disciples who end up becoming Christians. In fact, that's what you see in the Great Commission. Is there, go therefore and make disciples, and then you baptize those disciples in the name of Jesus Christ. You cannot be baptized into Christ unless you first have decided to be a disciple of Him. And disciples are followers. And they are committed to an ideal of how they wish to be. And to be one person, to not be double-minded, means exactly that. To say, I've chosen the path. Still got to walk it. Some days I'm going to stumble. Sometimes I'm going to make mistakes. Might even get off course a little bit. But do you know, if you get off course, but you know what course you wish to be on, that's exactly how you go from lost to saved. That's exactly how you go from lost to back on track. Right? If you are drifting, but you know where you should be, you'll notice the drift and correct course. But you've got to decide to be a disciple of Jesus. That's how you take care of yourself. Follow the one who is the way, the truth, and the life. You've got to commit yourself to consistency in your obedience to Jesus. Faithfulness occasionally is not faithfulness at all. Right? The very definition of faithfulness is this idea of loyalty and trustworthiness. If I am occasionally faithful, I mean, imagine describing a faithful friend. You say, yes, they're occasionally a faithful friend. Then they're not a faithful friend. It must be who we are, sincerely, congruently, at every step of the day through our life. You must choose to be one person. The next is you now, once you decide to be that one person, that follower of Jesus, then you're going to have to begin to choose behavior that's going to benefit your soul. And oftentimes the behavior that benefits your soul will be the exact same behavior that does not benefit your body. Right? It will not give you what you want in the temporary. It will not be the thing that makes your life easier. It will oftentimes be the thing that makes it harder. In 2 Corinthians chapter 4, we're told, therefore do not lose heart, but though our outer man is decaying, yet our inner man is being renewed day by day. The comparison and the contrast between the outer man and the inner man is not accidental. The inward man is renewed day by day. The outer man is decaying. What a horrible way to think about aging, isn't it? It's like, if we talked about aging that way, it would be very uncomfortable. Do you know, we don't have birthdays anymore. We have decay days. You know, congratulations, one more year of decaying. You're slowly but surely rotting. We can tell. I mean, that is the language of that verse, though, isn't it? The outer man is decaying. That is a rotten corpse walking around until it can't anymore. That's what you are in. Your outer man is a corpse that hasn't fully corpseified yet. And it's a word right now. But our inner man is being renewed day by day. I want you to start to treat your soul like you're going to have to live with it forever. Unfortunately, I think a lot of us treat our souls like we treat rental cars. Right? You get in a rental car, especially if you get in a rental car with the full coverage, right? Maybe your company splurged and got you the full coverage on it so that every ding, every scratch, everything, all covered, no problem. You can walk away with that thing on fire and you're fine. You drive that car differently. Right? That's one of the biggest complaints of people who have Airbnbs or vacation rentals, right? Is that you get this vacation rental, you put it together, and then people stay in it a week. Now, if you stay in your house for years, you treat it one way. But if you stay in a house for a week, people will trash it because they think it's a temporary thing. And look, that's not just the bad people. I've gone to vacation rentals with my kids, and as they're going into the rooms, they are jumping on their beds. They are not allowed to do that at home, but this is like free money, man. It's different. You treat it differently when you feel like it's temporary. But when you think, hey, I got to drive this car for another 100,000 miles, you might get around to the oil change. You think I got to live in this house for another decade? You might think about painting the walls. Put a little effort into making sure that it's the regular maintenance and upkeep is done. Do not treat your soul like a car rental. In Matthew 10, verse 28, we're told, do not fear those who kill the body but cannot kill the soul. Rather, fear him who can destroy both soul and body in hell. Do you know what the most important maintenance thing your soul needs is a relationship with Jesus? If you want to take care of your soul so that it goes into eternity nice and shiny and clean and white, pure as the driven snow, without a single splotch of sin on it, you know where you're going to figure out how to get that maintenance? You're going to have to go to Jesus. Your connection to His Word and your application of it, because that's exactly what the Bible is. It's not a book to be read academically. We've said this many times from this pulpit before. At this point, some of you can just go to sleep because you know full well what I'm going to say next. The Bible is not meant to be used academically. We don't read it and then move on with our life. We read it and then we do it. It is an instruction manual. It's meant to be read and then applied, and then if you make a mistake, you go back and you read it again and you reapply. And you do that as many times as it takes. Because your soul matters. And you're going to have to live with it forever. Oftentimes, it seems that we treat our bodies like they're the thing we're going to live with forever. And our souls like they're temporary. You cannot drink poison and expect your body to do well. Right? You understand that, right? Like if I set you down at the table and I said, today, I have motor oil for you to drink, you would say, well, I'm not touching that stuff. That's not going in my body. That would hurt my body. That is exactly what sin does. Sin is poison for the soul. You know full well the impact of not taking care of your body. And when your body isn't working right, we have all sorts of experts that we get involved to try and get it working the way it ought to. But when your soul's not right, how many times do we suffer with that silently? Get a problem, sin issue, if something just in misalignment in the way that I'm living, maybe you're just in a spiritual doldrum. Like, it's not anything in particular I'm doing wrong. I'm just not as passionate and committed to the Lord as I know I ought to be, and there's just something off, and I don't know what to do about it. If it were anything else in life, you would get help. But so often with our souls, what do? We say, oh, it's the inner man. It's decaying, but nobody can see. So I'll just let it go. Don't do it. Treat your soul like you're going to have to live with it forever. The next is, I need you to find your anchor. If you are climbing a ladder, to give another kind of anchor analogy, you want to make sure that that ladder is anchored at the bottom. Right? There was a time I was at a work party at a congregation, and we had a ladder set up, and unfortunately it was my ladder. I didn't set it up, but it was my ladder. And it was set up so that instead of being as it ought to, where you got about a 40-degree angle or something like that, it was kicked out to go up onto the roof. So it was kicked out at a very shallow angle. And an older man started to climb it. And it wasn't anchored in the bottom, and when you have it shallow like that, and it's not anchored at the feet, it can slip, and that's exactly what happened. And Rick rode that thing down, and as he rode it down, his head hit the rungs of my ladder, and it scalped him. I mean, I don't know any other real way to describe it. It just his son-in-law ended up holding his face on for him while we called 911. And it was all because of one thing. It wasn't that Rick didn't know how to climb a ladder. It wasn't that the height was even that high. It was a fairly low, flat roof. It's just a lack of an anchor. It just was not properly stabilized at the bottom. Your life can look perfectly fine. You can check all of the boxes that make the American dream. You can do all the right kind of moral things that we talked about last week of living a fairly moral, good life. But if your anchor's off, it will not work. Hebrews chapter 6, when God desired to show more convincingly to the heirs of the promise the unchangeable character of his purpose, he guaranteed it with an oath, so that by two unchangeable things in which it is impossible for God to lie, we who have fled for refuge might have strong encouragement to hold fast to the hope set before us. We have this as a sure and steadfast anchor of the soul, a hope that enters into the inner place behind the curtain. The anchor of the soul is hope. So you have to ask yourself the question, if you're going to take care of yourself, you have to ask yourself, what is my hope? What is the thing that if I lost this, all would be lost? Because if you figure out that, then you've also figured out whether your hope is God or you have an idol. Because that's the other thing, is there are plenty of times where we have a hope, a thing that we cling to that is the most important thing to us. If I lost the respect of my fellow man, all would be lost. If I lost all of my wealth and I was in poverty, all would be lost. If my family all died, all would be lost. If my family didn't love me, all would be lost. If I lost my friends, all would be lost. Those are all idols. The hope of eternity with God, the promise that he has made, that he will take you someday where every tear is wiped away, that's the hope that holds. Everything else is inferior. The very definition of heaven being a place where every tear is wiped away is that if you make it to heaven, all is not lost, right? If I make it to heaven, no matter what sorrow and woe and tragedy and trauma and pain I've been through, if I make it there, God will be able to wipe away every tear. All will not be lost. But if I don't make it there, what will a man give for his soul? So oftentimes we drift simply because we have a shortage of hope or a lack of clarity on what that hope is. The opposite of drifting is perseverance. Right? If you imagine a boat and the boat just slowly kind of drifts away by the wind and the waves, it's drifting. Well, what's the opposite of that? The opposite of that is a boat that chooses its course, and the winds and the waves come, and it drives its course no matter what the wind brings and no matter how big the waves, and it continues that course. We call that perseverance. If you want perseverance for your soul, you are absolutely going to have hope. And if you do not have it, I will tell you, I wasn't the guy who rode the ladder down. And I've climbed a lot of ladders in my day. My dad painted houses, exterior of houses, and so I climbed a lot of ladders from a very young age. I could tell you some of the things that my dad did when he had to get to a spot that was hard to get to, but he had a small minion he could hang out there. All sorts of stuff that I've done. Child labor laws now. But after that experience, I will tell you this. If I am still not as careful on ladders as I should be. Ask Jenna. But I will tell you this, when a ladder does not feel anchored, I can feel it. I kind of feel it with my legs, feel it with my feet on the rungs. I climb different. Now, if the ladder's really well anchored, you'll see me just scramble right up that thing. No problem. I have no issue with the heights thing, not a big deal. But if that ladder's got a little bit of that, that feeling, in it, I climb different. Look, you want to get to heaven? You want to live faithful unto death? Set your anchor. Because if you don't set your anchor, if you don't think about heaven, if you don't think about eternity with God, if you don't ask those questions that you can't answer, those are some of the best questions. What's heaven going to be like? Whatever you tell me is wrong. I mean, isn't that true? Like, whatever you tell me, the answer is, heaven's going to be like, no, you're wrong. So why even ask it? Because it's part of the process of anchoring my hope to eternity. What do you think we'll talk about when we get to have a friend of mine who has since passed? He and I would sit around and talk, and his conclusion was, he goes, Scott, by the time you show up, I don't think I'll have said one word yet. And he knew he was going to, barring anything catastrophic, he was going to beat me there, and he did. He said, Scott, you're going to show up, and I'll be at the gate still and say, Lowell, have you, what do you think? And he said, I won't have even said anything yet. Now, here's what I know. He's wrong. I don't know what it's going to be like, but his vision of it is wrong. But why do we talk about it if we know we don't have the proper picture? Because you have to get some image in your mind. But this is where I'm going. And this is my anchor that is set. I'm going to start putting my feet on the rungs of the ladder, and I'm going to climb up. If you're going to take care of your soul, you do not give yourself over to sin. I'm very precise with my language in this one. Don't give yourself over to sin. If I told you, if you want to take care of yourself, don't sin, that would be accurate, right? I mean, if you want to take care of your soul, don't sin. That's an accurate statement. But I know full well that if I put up there, don't sin, you're going to do the exact same thing that I would do if I saw that on the slide. Well, too late for that one. I've been there, done that. I'm probably going to do it again tomorrow too. I'm not going to mean to, but I'm probably going to. I mean, my life is just full of one miss after another. And that's what sin is missing the mark. Went to the gun range with several of my kids. We're kind of slowly but surely going through the process of learning gun safety and things like that. And so you take in the range and you set up the target, and there's an obvious bullseye, right? And what do? Inevitably, they miss. And then I go, oh, let me show you how it's done. And I miss. We call it target practice, right? Target practice. But if I'm in the gun range and I'm aiming to hit the target and I miss, that's one thing. But there's an attendant there too, right? There's an attendant back in there that is managing the gun range. And if I'm aiming down range and I miss, that's one thing. But if I turn around like this, that's a whole nother thing, isn't it? He and I are going to have a conversation, and it will be very quick, and he doesn't tend to miss. There's a difference between sinning and giving yourself over to sin. In Galatians 1, he gave himself for our sins to deliver us from the present evil age according to the will of our God and Father. There is a tenor to the language of the discussion of evil and sin in the Bible. God's goal is to deliver you from it, and he wants you to think likewise that I want to be delivered from it. If you are somebody who has given yourself over to sin and you said, like, I just like it, I'm going to keep at it, it's just part of who I am, Jesus has nothing for you. Jesus' death does not cover the sins of the person who gives himself over to sin. But to the person who says, please deliver me from this evil age. To the person who says, look, I wish to be right, God. I wish I didn't sin. I wish I didn't have all of these things that I needed help with. That person can be taken care of. So if you want to take care of your soul, don't make excuses for sin. Don't make excuses for your sin. Don't make excuses for sin in the world at large. There's nothing excusable about it. And don't accept that it's just a part of who you are. I have no doubt that every person in this room has sins that they have in their life that they wish they didn't. Things that they've done in the last week, and you'll have plenty of time to think about those things as we partake of the Lord's Supper. That's part of the examining yourself, right? But don't accept that that has to be a part of your life. Pursue something different. In Romans chapter 6, it says, what shall we say then? Are we to continue in sin that grace may abound? God forbid. May it never be, says some translation. How can we who died to sin still live in it? The reason you follow Jesus and you're a disciple of Jesus, remember, be one person, is because you want to be free from sin. So whatever it is in your character that is missing, whatever it is that you look at in the mirror and you go, I don't like that. Okay, what are you going to do about it? Because you can't do something about it. You say, well, it's impossible. Look, with man, these things are impossible. With God, all things are possible. This guy, you don't know. I've dealt with this my whole life. Yeah, okay. Okay. I didn't stutter, did I? Don't accept it. Don't give yourself over to sin. The next, your soul needs gratitude. Souls thrive on gratitude. Read the Psalms and you are reading the outpouring of grateful souls so often within the Psalms. Psalm 139, verse 13 and 14. For you formed my inward parts, you wove me in my mother's womb. I will give thanks to you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works, and my soul knows it very well. My soul knows it very well. My soul counts up the things that God has done that are good for me. Now, I'm going to give you a very short Latin lesson. Latin word for good is bene. And it's where we get some English words from. Count up the good. I want you to count the benefits. And I want you to be specific. Next time you pray, I want you to be specific. Not generic thankfulness for good things that are in your life, but I want you to be specific. This is a great inner room prayer. Oftentimes in public prayers, we don't have the time for the level of specificity, especially because oftentimes we are representing not just our own desires to give gratitude to God, but others as well. So we have to be more general. In your inner room, pray specifically about the benefit that God has done for you. And as you do that, remember the benefactor that gave them to you. Right? Not just the good things, but where they came from. Because if you remember the good, but you don't remember where it came from, you've missed the point. So be specific, and then make sure you give God credit. And then I want you to remember that makes you a beneficiary. Because that is a humbling thought. And that is what Psalm 139 is saying. You formed my inward parts. You wove me in my mother's womb. I will give thanks to you. You see the benefits and the benefactor, but there's also a lot of I's in there. I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works. I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Quite often, David in the Psalms would be overwhelmed by the fact that God would consider him. When you consider the good things, the benefits in your life, and that those good things come from God, and that is exactly what James 1 says, do not be deceived, my beloved brothers. Every good gift and every perfect gift is from above. And then you realize that those specific things that only God provides, He chose to provide you with. Who is man that you would consider him? Who am I? Your soul needs gratitude because it aligns it within the picture of eternity. We're meant to be grateful and to count up the good. Next thing I want you to do is I want you to diligently eradicate worry with purpose. You look at Matthew chapter 6, do not worry then saying, what will we eat, or what will we drink, or what will we wear for clothing? For the Gentiles eagerly seek all these things. For your heavenly Father knows that you need all these things, but seek first His kingdom and His righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. You notice there is a don't and then there's a do. The don't is do not worry. Now, if I tell you simply, do not worry, do you know what I have set you up for? Worry, right? I mean, that's the nature of it, right? If I don't worry, don't think about an elephant right now. Whatever you do, think about anything you want, but do not think about an elephant. Don't think about him having a big, long trunk. Don't think about him standing on a giant beach ball. See, I can mess with your head, can't I? But if I give you a do not, and then I give you a do, now I can do not worry. So what's the do? Seek first His kingdom and His righteousness. Find purpose. If you are worried about a great many things, the first thing you can do is go find something to do. Something to do in the kingdom. Something you can do that would help others. Something you can do to serve. The good news of the gospel, one way to think of it is that the gospel is news that because of Jesus, you're perfectly safe. Now, that doesn't mean bad things can't happen here, but what's the end story to those who place their faith in Jesus? The good news is you're safe because you don't have to fear them who can kill the body because they can't kill the soul. I don't have to worry about what might happen here because there is a hereafter. There is no worry about the second death. So go out and do something. If you knew you were perfectly safe and that all would end well, what would you do? In Philippians chapter 1, Paul says, I know that through your prayers and the help of the Spirit of Jesus Christ, this will turn out for my deliverance, as it is my eager expectation and hope that I will not be at all ashamed, but that with full courage, now as always, Christ will be honored in my body, whether by life or by death. For to me, to live is Christ, and to die is gain. That is a man who speaks as if he's perfectly safe. If I live, I can do his work. If I die, I go home. You want to eradicate worry in your life? If you find yourself to be a perpetual hand-wringer, find good work to do in the kingdom. Seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and it'll take care of your soul. And then last, we'll finish up with this. I want you to actively learn to forgive. In Luke chapter 17, Jesus tells them, take heed to yourselves. That's another way of saying, take care of yourself. Take heed to yourselves. If your brother sins against you, rebuke him, and if he repents, forgive him. And if he sins against you 7 times in a day, and 7 times in a day returns to you, saying, I repent, you shall forgive him. And the apostle said to the Lord, increase our faith. You'll notice forgiveness is an act of faith. Jesus tells them, forgive, and they say, increase our faith. These two things are tied together. In Ephesians chapter 1, in him we have redemption through his blood, the forgiveness of our trespasses according to the riches of his grace. We have another thing that's brought into the discussion of forgiveness. Is forgiveness for us is a matter of faith. I place my faith in God, and therefore I can forgive. And we're told that when God forgives, his forgiveness of us is not a reflection of how good we are, but is a reflection of the riches of his grace. So here's the thing that you need to ask yourself. What kind of person do you wish to be? Because your faith and your commitment to grace is seen in your willingness to forgive others. And if right now in your life there are people that you are holding a grudge against, there is bitterness against, there is anger or frustration or poison of that sort in your heart towards other human beings, I want you to increase your faith and your commitment to grace. Do we believe that grace is a good thing? Do we believe in the ideal of the riches of God's grace? If we think grace is a good thing, then it can't just be a good thing for me. It has to be a good thing for others too. So if you want to take care of your soul, don't let the bitterness and the bitter poison of holding a grudge against others poison your soul. Actively seek to forgive. Take care of yourself. You're going to have to live with that soul of yours forever. At this time, we have an invitation. And the invitation is this. Jesus recognizes that you have not done a great job of taking care of your soul. And that you've sinned, and the wages of sin are death. And that if we all got what we deserved, hell would be completely full. So Jesus invites you to let his blood cover your sins, so that he would take care of your soul as you are a disciple of his. If we can help you to do that, to obey Jesus through baptism, to have your sins washed away and begin your walk as a disciple of Jesus Christ, please come forward and let us know as we stand and sing the invitation song.